Well, I want to thank the Rocky Mountain Press and Justice Center for sponsoring this event. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come here and listen to me talk about my book, Prosecution of George W. Bush for Murder. I realize that the title of my book is a little ambiguous. Some people have chided me for not being a little more clear about my intentions. That was a funny thing I just said, and you didn't think it was very funny. I said that the title of this book was a little ambiguous.
Got it.
And you took me seriously, right? How can I make it any more clear? How, you may ask, is the subject of this book relevant to what is happening today in America, including the upcoming election? Firstly, it's relevant because the current Republican administration of George Bush is criminally responsible for the war in Iraq, a war obviously that should never have been fought. And it's a war that the Democratic nominee for President, Barack Obama, perceptively opposed. On the other hand, the Republican nominee, John McCain, fully supported the war against Saddam Hussein, someone who was not an enemy of the United States of America. If any of you think he was, I'm here to tell you you're wrong. He was an enemy of George Bush. There's no evidence that Saddam Hussein was an enemy of the United States of America. The evidence is overwhelming that he had nothing to do with 9/11. There have been several investigations, 9/11 Commission, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Not one speck of evidence showing any umbilical cord between Hussein and 9/11, and he was as much of a threat to the security of this country as you or I. And yet, John McCain was 100% in favor of invading a country like this, Iraq. As if this terrible lack of judgment, how can it be any worse? To go to war against someone not our enemy, not involved in 9/11, not a threat to the security of this country, as if that terrible lack of judgment on McCain's part is not bad enough. Remarkably, and despite the fact that the war in Iraq has turned out to be an unmitigated disaster, McCain is on record as saying several times that if he had to do it all over again, he'd vote the same way. He'd vote for the war. And my position is that that alone, it would seem, would disqualify him from occupying the highest office in our land. Secondly, we all know that because of Bush's unprovoked invasion of Iraq, a sovereign nation, for the first time in this nation's history, the majority of people in the Western world have a negative view of America. America no longer being the great nation that people throughout the world used to look up to. And I say that if we want this nation to become the great nation that it once was, respected around the world, we can hardly do this unless we take the first step of bringing those responsible for the war in Iraq to justice, which is the subject matter of my book. I'm not going to give a long presentation today. It just doesn't seem proper under the circumstances with all this noise and everything to give a long talk, because I want to have a little time. I want to have a little time for questions and answers. I want to hear what you folks have to say about my suggestion about prosecuting George Bush for murder. Something, by the way, that many people think is very radical. Very radical. I don't have a computer, but now and then people send me printouts from the computer. And a month or so ago, I got a printout from Amazon.com, from the internet, I guess. And they said that in this printout from Amazon.com, it said that in the area of radical thought, this book was #1 in sales, just above books by Marx, Lenin, and Machiavelli. A lovely group of people to be associated with. But my question is this: how can this book be characterized as radical when what I say in the book is simply to follow the letter of the law? I don't understand it. If I weren't following the letter of the law, then I could see it. But it's all the law here. This book is identical to every true crime book I've ever written. I present the evidence and the applicable law to prove my case. And yet, people that haven't read the book, some of them think I've lost my marbles. But those who have read the book don't think that at all. It's a very, very serious book. Anyway, I was saying that I wasn't going to give a long talk up here, but I will talk for 5, 10, 15 minutes. We'll see. In the book, I present evidence that proves beyond all reasonable doubt that George Bush took this nation to war in Iraq on a lie, under false pretenses, and therefore under the law, he's guilty of murder for the deaths of over 4,000 young American soldiers who have died so far fighting his war in Iraq. Not your war or my war or America's war, but George Bush's war. And let's not forget about the over 100,000, and that's a very conservative estimate. Some estimates place the number in excess of 1 million. But let's not forget about the over 100,000 innocent Iraqi men, women, children, and babies who have died horrible, violent deaths because of George Bush's war. Now, although I believe that Bush is guilty of thousands of murders, when I testified on July 25th before the House Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C., I was told beforehand in no uncertain terms that I could not accuse George Bush of any crime, nor could I even speak of him as having done anything dishonorable. They said you can use the words Bush administration or Bush administration officials, but you can't accuse Bush of any crime or dishonorable conduct. And I told the committee that's not going to make for the best of articulations, but I'll do the best that I can. So instead of my saying that Bush was guilty of murder, I said in various parts of my testimony that the Bush administration or Bush administration officials were guilty. Billions of words, as you know, harsh, condemnatory words have been written and said about George Bush in the past 7 years, none of which he could possibly care any less about. They're just words, absolutely useless. But up to now, other than talking, no one has done anything at all to George Bush. No impeachment, not even an investigation of him. Nothing at all. Clinton, my God, I don't have to tell you. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, he was savaged by the media, including liberal papers like the New York Times and Washington Post, for absolutely nothing. It's consensual sex outside of marriage and tries to cover it up. The monstrous, grotesque, obscene Ken Starr investigated Clinton, tried to destroy the Clinton presidency, and what's even worse, who funded his effort? Do you have any idea who funded his effort? The United States government. A 7-year, $70 million effort of Starr, this grotesque, monstrous individual, funded by the federal government against Bill Clinton. Clinton was impeached. They tried to drive him from office, wanted to hang him in the town square at noontime, and here's Bush taking this nation to war on a lie. And as I'm talking to you right now, there may be 1 million people in their graves right now decomposing because of Bush, and no one is doing anything at all to George Bush. But in my book, I put together a legal case against Bush that could result in his being prosecuted for first-degree murder in an American courtroom. I set forth the legal architecture against Bush, the evidence of his guilt, which I'll be getting into in a little while, and the jurisdiction to prosecute him. For several years now, one revelation after another has come out, often accompanied by a book, about the Bush administration's lies and deceptions in taking this nation to war in Iraq, from Curveball and the Niger incident, and there's a recent revelation in the current book about the White House supposedly ordering the CIA to forge a document connecting Hussein with Al-Qaeda. Now, while all of these revelations are very good, I'm the first one to tell you I'm very happy about them. Great. These revelations are great. But you have to know that they don't mean anything at all. Do you understand what I'm saying? They mean nothing at all unless someone does something about it. The revelations by themselves don't go anywhere. They're just revelations unless someone does something about it. And that's why when people hear these revelations, they are prompted to ask, what now? Where do we go from here?